Number one, it was not called an endorsement meeting. Their endorsement meeting was September 11th. In late August, I was invited to a town meeting of AFSCME workers and leaders. That's what they billed it as. And it was after work. They said, would you please come and talk to our membership? And they said, it's going to be a town meeting, no holds barred. I go to a lot of town meetings of different kinds, community groups, labor groups, mayors, you name it. I think I'm pretty accessible. I go to anything. I stand in the arena. I do it with the press. I think I'm a pretty accessible person to the press. Question after question. I believe in that process, and so, AFSCME was hardly a real big fan of some of the things I did. They were very much against the public pension reform, and they were against my closing of Howe facility. Probably about 700 people. There were 700 jobs there. They were against some of our other proposals, but I was willing to go. I brought somebody after work, our budget director, in case I had technical questions about various issues involving finance. Not for them. He didn't say a word in answer any questions. In case I had any questions about money. I mean, a lot of these questions that were thrown at me had to do with funds. These are the workers. If you're the chief executive and you're meeting with the representative of the largest number of your employees, I think that's healthy to have that interchange. I learned things at that meeting that I need to know. And so if I had, and I've done this with other meetings, I take members of our cabinet, sometimes I take them all to a town meeting in case there are questions that I have so they can be answered. So I don't think that was not an endorsement session. It was a, kind of a accountability session, you want to call that, if people could ask me anything and everything, and they did. Well, I think we should look at the genesis of the whole thing. The contract, and I think this is an important issue, the contract was negotiated prior to my arrival. It had nothing to do with the contract. It's a union contract. It's a 4-year contract. It's enforceable in federal court. If you violate terms of the contract, they can take you to federal court the very next day, and you can see how the legal system works. So I inherited this contract on day one. I knew from the beginning, if we're going to have money for health and education and public safety and veterans and you name it, we had to get concessions from the union. Now, the history is, under Jim Edgar, under Jim Thompson, under George Ryan, under Rod Blagojevich, AFSCME never, ever gave concessions on their union contract. Not one iota. Never, ever. Mayor Daley in Chicago went to AFSCME within the past year asking for concessions. No concessions. Nobody has ever done this. We sat down with them. We said, you've got to give concessions given our dire straits. Finally, we took some action under our contract, the only thing you can do sometimes, and they took us to court. We went to court. The judge appointed a mediator. This was about a year or so ago, and the mediator came up with a plan. He said, well, if the union makes some concessions, will you make this agreement with them? And so we did. We got concessions from the union that saved the taxpayers money. There was another, this was ongoing. We meet with the union all the time, every month, every week after week. We have to, because we want more concessions. The bottom line is that the union proposed, and the mediator was involved in this, that if we extended our agreement to the end of the contract, which is June 30th of 2012, the union would be willing to give further concessions that would save taxpayers money now. I decided to take that proposal and accept it. We need savings now. Now, I can tell you this. Whoever is governor, I hope it's me, the moment you're sworn in, you're going to be negotiating the new contract. It doesn't happen in a month or two. It's going to take a year and a half to negotiate the new contract. But we have realized significant savings of about $325 million, give or take, in the existing contract that no one has ever been able to get concessions from in the past. I want to say one more thing. We haven't given up. We want the union to really, really consider how dire our straits are, and really do more on unpaid days off. Furlough days, we want to call them that. I mean, I have imposed that, and your paper has covered it, on myself, on my staff, and on all policymakers of state government. 24 days. It's very difficult. But we have to realize economies. Part of the reason I did that for the management, 2,700 employees, is to try and get the union to understand how serious this matter is. We need them to extend themselves further, and our agreement with them is ongoing, to try and get more unpaid days off and more savings. That's what I have to do. It's not easy. I'm governor all the time, 7 days a week. I can tell you what I did yesterday. I went to the home of a mom who lost her son in Afghanistan. That's how I started the day. I then went to a school not far from her house to announce a program that's going to, it's a $270 million statewide program, but in Chicago, $54 million is going to be used to build and rebuild schools. And there were workmen right there working on that. And I talked to the children at Alex Haley's school about education and readers are leaders. That's what I did there. And then I got on a plane. I went to Rochelle, Illinois. There's a company coming from Wisconsin to build railroad cars in Rochelle. They're manufacturing. I think that's appropriate. The owners of the company, the leaders of the company, came from Japan. We have a lot of Japanese-owned businesses that are investing and employing thousands of Illinois workers. The governor should show up, shake their hand. There's certain cultural things, bow. And we had a groundbreaking of something that's going to create jobs, not just today, but for years to come. We have a great opportunity to build railroad cars for high-speed rail in Illinois and across the Midwest. So I think the governor, and I think it's important, needs to be at these events representing the people and, you know, sort of shaking hands and concluding the deal. The day before, there was a company called Groupon, social commerce. Okay, I don't know all the details. All I know is that they have 7 employees in 2008. They now have 900 employees in Illinois, from 7 to 900 in 2 years. And we had a program for them. They're growing 250 more jobs. So 1,150 jobs in the course of 2 years. You know, you better show up. I mean, let's say a governor doesn't show up and says, well, you're not important enough for me to shake your hand. Well, we want to keep him here in Illinois. We don't want him going off to someplace else. That's how I got Ford to do. I had to go to Ford, and Ford said any state in the union can compete to get 1,200 manufacturing jobs. Everybody was vying for it. We got it. We got it. Navistar, thinking about moving, they're being wooed by southern states. I sat down with him. Their chief exec wrote a letter to the editor after it was all over. He said he liked working with me. I'm a down-to-earth person. Chicago Sun-Times said I'm pro-business and pro-people. And I think there are a lot of skills governors have to bring to the table. Being able to deal with human beings in a positive way, civil, is a good way to go. And so that's how Navistar is growing here. They're hiring 500 new engineers in our state, And that's why I believe in education. We want to educate people. And now Boeing is south of here. They're going to be at Mid-America Airport, about 100 jobs or so. If they win the supertanker contract, 4,000 jobs. Yep. And the Boeing likes working with me. We have a good relationship. I'm going to be at Chrysler next week, Fiat Chrysler, a very big company. They're going to have a very big announcement. And I think going there, which is your question, you say, well, that's, in a campaign, what am I supposed to do? Tell Sergio from Turin, Italy, well, I'm too busy for you. I don't think so. Not if they're going to.
Also talking about the road projects
over here, right in a very dangerous intersection. Well, don't you think that's important to get to the people of Illinois that last year we had the fewest number of traffic fatalities in Illinois since 1921. It doesn't happen by magic. You have to make investments in safe roads and definitely safe bridges. Now, if you look at how I've done the whole transportation thing with roads, no politics. We have a 5-year plan of DOT, and that's how we do it. That's unheard of for governors before me. And first of all, I got the financing for it. The guy I'm running against, he goes to the events up in Bloomington for the train station there, spending, cutting the ribbon, but he didn't vote for the funding. You know, I mean, you can't be governor if you're doing that. You got to have, you know, I think the fortitude to get the funding for the bonds. You can't pay for the bonds unless you fund them. And so I do that. Now, I'm running against Brady. I don't know if he said it down here, but he came out with this cockamamie idea of borrowing $50 billion. The debt service on that alone, annual debt service, is $4.5 billion. $4.5 billion. That's about as much money as we put into general aid to education right now in Illinois. To put our state in hock is ridiculous. This is, I mean, I know about strategic borrowing. We had to borrow $3.5 billion, and we have to go to the credit markets to do that. But the notion of borrowing $50 billion after he's been bashing me all over the state saying I'm for borrowing, I don't know where he's coming from. And, you know, I had your paper, I think it's from yesterday, unsure of job losses. Well, we have 1,102 fewer state employees today than when I started. It's not easy to do this. Now, these were not based all on attrition. I had to, you know, with a large facility, a controversial matter, I closed that down. I also closed some other things down. But I do believe, as your paper says, we have the lowest number of state employees per capita of any state in the union. Now, there is a limit to this. We cannot just throw out all the state employees who are doing their work. They do good work, and I honor their work. And that's why I go to their meetings. If they want to yell at me, they can yell at me, and I listen, and then I try and answer. So it seems to me that, you know, if you're going to be governor of Illinois, you cannot slogan your way to the election. A dime and a dollar, we've already done that. We have cut our state general revenue fund, the only thing you have really discretion over, by $3 billion. Now, the budgeting for results law that I champion, Senator Kotowski was a sponsor, is a very good law. It puts every expenditure under a microscope annually, has very rigid, rigorous requirements, and I think we can get more savings out of that. But they're going to be done in a prudent, targeted way. Blunderbuss, reckless cuts that are just wrong-headed, I'm not going to go that way. We've actually spent, or in this fiscal year, we've spent a little more money on our education this year than we did last year, partly because we got the federal money that Senator Brady wouldn't have gotten. And I think that's what a good governor does. You know, there's agencies of state government that are vital. I include veterans in that. The Veterans Department, if he has his 10% across the board, what are we going to do with our long-term care facilities? We'll have to close them down for our very elderly veterans. We'll have to shut down or very much limit our program of helping veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. We're not doing that. We have to have a governor who says, wait a minute, this program, too important to cut. We'll have to cut over here. And that's what I've done.